dry, so the non-geeks might want to leave the room. Looks like we're actually left only with the geeks, so that's good. But this is going to be quite short, so you won't have to stay awake for long, and hopefully we'll get some lunch sooner than we thought. So, just see if I've got this the right way around. Okay, so we'll start with the movie, please. It's the one on YouTube. But we probably can skip it because I think we've had a fairly good introduction to Passive House, so if we're on a time schedule. I quite like this little movie, I think it's quite sweet.
Does your house have a heater in the basement or maybe a fireplace? Probably also a central air conditioner or maybe a window unit. Did you ever wonder if it was necessary? In 1991, a physicist in Austria, Dr. Feist, built the first passive house. Here's what he did. 1. Proper insulation. It's just like wearing the right winter jacket. It also doesn't need a heater. 2. No air leakages. There should be no holes, small or large, to let hot air out of the house. 3. No thermal bridges. A thermal bridge is like a road for heating energy in which warmth can travel right through your walls. As a matter of fact, most of our houses have thermal highways in our walls where heat can easily travel to the outside. Plus, the house needs proper windows most of the time with triple pane glass. It needs to be oriented properly so the sun can heat it in the winter and shade is provided in the summer. And it uses an HRV, a device that provides the inside with fresh air without letting the heat out. Add all these things up, and it turns out your house doesn't need a heater or air conditioner. So where does the heat come from? A passive house needs 90% less energy, and that can easily be supplied by your body heat, the sun, your appliances, light bulbs, and even your TV. This saves you a lot of money on your heating bill and helps preserve the environment.
Do we make it in 90 seconds?
Got all that? What I'm going to talk about is thermal bridging. So the issue of thermal bridging is important, I believe, for anyone wanting to improve the thermal performance of their building. But there's no requirement in New Zealand to consider thermal bridges as part of the building code. And in fact, many of the details that we use as part of 3604, the acceptable solution to B1 structure, are full of thermal bridges. However, it is a requirement in Passive House. And I'm not sure what I meant by that. Yeah, we've had a fairly good introduction so far from Cara and Craig. So why am I here talking about thermal bridges? Well, what I'm interested in is what problems, where the overlaps are between straw bale construction and Passive House. And I believe that there are some good overlaps. We're both trying to achieve low energy, comfortable buildings at the end of the day. However, Passive House isn't a prescriptive way of building. Straw bale can be a method of fulfilling Passive House, or equally, Passive House can be a performance standard applied to straw bale. But I do, again, just believe that this is about improving the quality of our buildings. So the detail of the slide isn't important. It's just saying, again, Passive Houses use a tenth of the energy of a conventional building, and again, reduced energy, increased comfort. That's what we want straw bale buildings to do too. So Passive House has some energy criteria. We have the energy or cooling demand of 15 kilowatt hours per metre squared per year, or the cooling load, heating or cooling load of 10 watts per metre squared. There's the primary energy that we've talked about, and the airtightness, which we've also covered this morning. But it's the thermal bridge-free construction that I want to talk about, and that is illustrated as through the psi value. That's that little symbol there, and that needs to be that needs to be less than 0.01 watts per metre squared. 0.01. So which of the passive house criteria can straw bale help to fulfil? First of all, there's airtightness. So the solid plasters that we use are inherently airtight. You just have to make sure that you get the connection detailing done right. And then there's the insulation requirement. So bale walls have a good U value, approximately 0.13, depending on your bales and your orientation of your bale, which is less than the recommended target of 0.15 for a cool temperate climate. And also, people that build in with straw bales, they are generally aiming for a good insulated envelope throughout, not just in the walls. So passive house has some comfort criteria too, which we've also covered. The surface temperatures, the temperatures of all the surfaces must not deviate from the operative temperature by more than 3.5 degrees. And the operative temperature is the temperature you experience within a building. And that's a factor of the air temperature, the surface temperatures, and the air velocity. So, why are surface temperatures important? Because if you have surface temperatures that are significantly below your operative temperature, then you can end up with condensation on those surfaces and eventually mould if it continues for long enough. That you can end up with things like this. So thermal bridges. It's pretty easy to spot where the thermal bridge in that diagram is, but I will just give you a definition of a thermal bridge. Sometimes called coal bridges in the UK, are areas of significantly higher heat transfer than the surrounding overall, that results in an overall reduction of the, I'm going to start that again, sorry. Areas that have significantly higher heat transfer than the surrounding material, resulting in an overall reduction of the thermal insulation of the building element. So another reason why thermal bridges are important is that they can add significantly to your annual heat demand in an otherwise very well insulated house. This is a slide from a presentation by Bronwyn Barry, who's a passive house designer in San Francisco, and they found that by moving the windows from the outside to the centre of the wall, they actually increased the total annual heat demand by 22%. Sorry, they reduced it by 22%, which is quite staggering for a really small change in detailing. So what I did was I modelled some typical straw bale window installation details, typical for New Zealand, to see how they performed in terms of thermal bridges. This is our own house. This is a post and beam structure, and this is a back and beam system. This is Tom Beecham's house, if he's here. He might recognise that. And those were the two that I modelled. This is another page for the geeks. This is the conductivity and conductance values that I used in my research. So you'll see that I assumed bales on flat throughout for consistency, so that didn't skew the results. And that was what I assumed for the lambda value of straw. And that was a sort of average of various different documentations on the thermal conductivity of straw. The packed straw, which if I go back a couple of slides, the packed straw in this detail is this area here that gives us this nice curved reveal, and here it would be on either side of the post. So I assumed that they had in the absence of any data, which someone here might actually be able to help me with, I assumed that the lambda value of that packed straw was 50% more than a straw bale, because it's loose and not orientated all one way. So that's that there. The bucks are filled with insulation of some form that I assumed that. I used some wood fibre board, which had lambda value of that. Earth plaster, an insulated plaster timber. So then I ended up with a U value for the bale wall of 0.1292, and the window I assumed was a passive house compliant for this climate window that was a timber frame window with triple glazing. So there's the pretty rainbow pictures. This is modelled in the Lawrence Berkeley National Laboratories Programme THERM, and I acquired quite a few more grey hairs by using this programme over the course of this research, which if anyone's actually ever used this programme, they'll understand. Was that you laughing, Cara? I know you do. This is an illustration of the thermal bridge calculation. So the thermal bridge or psi value is what is left over. So this is where the thermal bridge is occurring at this intersection here, all of this here. So it's what's left over when you take the U value of the wall and the U value of the window, and you subtract them from the U value for the whole system, and that gives you the additional heat loss in the thermal bridge. So this is my first result. This is the back and beam system there with the window on the outside. There's a few different ways that we can illustrate what's happening with the heat flow through the system. We've got the nice pretty rainbows there with the infrared going through, and then we've also got heat flux, which I found was actually a much better way of representing it. And so what we've got here is red is higher heat flux and purple is lower heat flux. So you can see where the majority of the heat transfer is occurring there. So with the standard back and beam detail, we ended up with an intersection temperature here of 16 degrees. I'm not going to go through all of these numbers, but they probably mean something to some people. And then I tried the same detail and moved the window into the centre. And we ended up with quite a significantly better result. We had a surface temperature of 17.2 here, and you can see that there is much less heat loss here. And that is partly because we're lining the window up with the centre of the wall. And so the temperature at this part of the wall is significantly higher than it is here. So there's going to be less heat flux happening here than if the window was out here because of the temperature differential. We ended up with a psi value that was 3 times lower just by doing that. So then the post and beam detail with the window on the outside is not very good. We've got a surface temperature here of 15.6, and you can see there's quite a bit of heat loss happening there. But then we move the whole thing into the centre, and we get a psi value which is half what it was before, and we had a surface temperature of 16.9, and you can see there's much less heat flow. So then I tried to improve those details even further, and what I did with the back and beam was I replaced the packed straw with the wood fibre board, which has a significantly better thermal conductivity, and I also used some insulated plaster which had perlite mixed into earth plaster basically, and that gave us a much better surface temperature 17.5. And that improved the psi value by another 33%. So then I tried to improve the post and beam detail, and so what I did was I enclosed the whole post in the wood fibre board, and with the same perlite plaster on the outside, and I've got a surface temperature of 17.8, and that improved the psi value by 2/3 over the standard post and beam detail. Now I'm going to commit a little bit of heresy here and point out that the packed straw that gives us the lovely curved reveal is actually the weak link in this installation detail because of its lower thermal conductivity, higher thermal conductivity. And so what I did was I just took it out and I fixed the window direct to the back, assuming that it's attached side value that's sort of pretty much on the money for the passive house requirement, 0.012 there. And you can see there's bugger all heat loss there. Okay. Technical term.
Between the back, sorry, is that insulation between the back and between the back studs?
Here, yes, sorry, the blue is wool, is glass wool or sheep's wool. But then I thought I'd put it in context and show you a nice 3604 detail modelled in therm. So we've got our stud, we've got our trimmer, we've got some fully filled with glass wool, cavity and timber cladding, jig on the inside. But I used the same window, the triple glazed timber frame window, because I thought that would only be fair. And that's what we get. That's the heat flux happening through that detail. And if I go, can I go back? Yeah. So you can kind of see the difference between that and that. So basically my conclusions were that generally straw bale details are pretty good. You know, if you're comparing them to a 3604 standard New Zealand timber frame detail, they're fantastic. But that you can gain significant improvement by placing the window in the centre of the wall. You can see the comparison there between the windows on the outside and the windows on the centre of the wall width. And the other outcomes were that thermal bridge free or close to thermal bridge free details are pretty easy to achieve with straw bale and can be achieved predominantly with natural materials. I'm sure if we stuck some straw board in there as well, that would work. The question is it worth it? Even in a passive house, if you get thermal bridges that are over the 0.01, you can compensate for those elsewhere in the building by having less heat loss elsewhere, so you can sort of fiddle it a little bit. So I guess that would be up to individual practitioners to decide whether it was worth going to this extra trouble. I didn't think it was that much extra trouble to be honest. And the last outcome is that the packed straw, or if you use straw plating to create that reveal, it's a similar kind of result, has a detrimental effect on the detail, so that's worth considering. And just to finish off, I'd like to add that I think that straw bale and passive house can be complementary strategies to provide low energy, comfortable houses in New Zealand, just as they have